Good evening. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners and welcome everyone that's here with us tonight. Tonight we have something kind of special. Alan White and Ricky Ray are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. They're with American Legion Post 148. So if you gentlemen want to...
We at the American Legion honored to be here with you tonight. The recognition of 16 years since 9/11. We're honored to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank y'all for being here. I thought about this all day today, and I wrote down some notes 2 or 3 times and what I might want to say, and I tore it up and I wrote it and scratched it through, and I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge the fact that it is September 11th today, and it's not a holiday. I've just found out we now call it Patriots Day. I wasn't aware of that, but I think we all remember where we were that day, and I know anytime you hear September 11th, it stands out in your mind and kind of takes you back to that time real quickly, whether you mean for it to or not. So I'd like to thank the first responders who responded. I want to thank our armed forces who protected us and continue to protect us. One of them is sitting up here with us right now, who is going to kill me for saying that, but I appreciate his time. And the families who were injured, had loved ones lost, just keep them in your continued prayers. Our invocation tonight is from the Wendell First Baptist Church, Reverend James Lee. Where are you, Mr. Lee? Come on up here. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
My pleasure, my pleasure. We are very honored to be here, and we are already uplifted just in hearing the reminding of the 9/11 event, Patriot, we call it now. But in doing so, I'd like to also be reminded of those who was in the disaster in this harvest disaster in Texas, and also Irma coming through our state as we speak. And before we go through our prayer, could we just go in silence, prayer for them?
There's a lot going on right now, isn't there?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Amen. We'd like to also share a few thanks for being here, just for inviting us. And we invite you to come to Wendell First Baptist Church. We're just on the west side.
Right.
And right near, just in case you don't know, we have services every Sunday. And we got some events coming up. We're going to be celebrating our 100 years centennial next year, March next year. And we'll be approaching you later on about the event of using the center for that event. Be in prayer for us, and come and join us. Also, we have a community outing on the 23rd, which will be from 10 to 2 at Wendell First Baptist Church.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Let's go in prayer. Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, distinguished guests, and citizens who are present, we thank God for your presence tonight, and we thank God for all He has done and is doing, and we pray that you will continue to do the service that you have been rendering for the citizens of Wendell. We thank you for the time that you spend here. I've served where you have been, where you are at one time, and I know the responsibility that you have, and I know the time that it takes. And we thank you for your time given for the citizens of Wendell. We pray that the Lord will bless you and keep you and give you strength and continued knowledge to know that all things do work according to Him. We pray that He would also continue to give you faith, that you would continue to work with all the citizens of Wendell. It might seem like we don't care sometimes, but we do care. And we say to, as we speak tonight, in behalf of the citizens, again, we thank you. We thank you, and we thank you for the service that you render. These blessings we ask. Amen. Praise God, and amen.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? A motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the agenda, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have one person signed up for public comment tonight. Ms. Nora Cambier. I know you know the drill about the lights.
I think so. Is this the microphone?
Yes, ma'am. I believe so. No, the other one.
The other one, okay, that's, my name is Nora Cambier, and I live at 3851 Wendell Boulevard, still. I think this might be my swan song with y'all. I'm here tonight because at the end of this long evening, I understand you're going to discuss your temporary sign ordinance. And as a resident of the Wendell Boulevard Historic District, and as a member of the Wendell Historic Historical Society, I am most distressed by the truck with the lighted sign across from the gymnasium, the Wendell Elementary School gymnasium. I don't understand how that's permitted, and I feel that it's just not suitable or attractive to be in our historic district. I realize it's next door to a commercial building, the Fleet, but Fleet is considered a contributing piece of architecture to the historic district. The truck and that sign contribute nothing. So I hope that you will consider the fact that this kind of thing is permitted as a temporary sign when you come to that agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Item number 4 is a presentation by the Wendell Chamber of Commerce regarding the Harvest Festival.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having me. As we talk about September 11th, I think about where I was graduating boot camp and getting sent to D.C. For the next 3 years. It's funny to see how fast time and things change. 16 years later, I get to stand here before and with you all. On the agenda for us is the Wendell Harvest Festival. We're excited to be able to carry on this tradition this year. We'd like to say thank you first off to all of our sponsors. We've had a tremendous outpour of sponsorship this year. Without the sponsors, these events would not be possible. So to all of you in the room and to all of you throughout the town, thank you very much. Our events are scheduled to kick off Friday, October 6th, 5 to 10 p.m., and Saturday, October 7th from 9 to 10 p.m. On Friday night, Friday at 8, we'll have the Guardian of the Galaxy 2. We welcome and invite all of those to attend. The parade will take place on Saturday at 10 a.m. It's going to go through Main Street. So far we have 30 plus groups. Some other events we have, Pumpkin Derby, Saturday at 2. What the Pumpkin Derby is, it's a kid-oriented event. Take a pumpkin, decorate it up, put some wheels on it, and see how fast it can go. Tractor pull for the kids. The Embers, Saturday night at 7. Thank you to the town of Wendell for sponsoring. Also to Kirk Howell, Cutler, and Thomas, and Affordable Dentures in Durham for leading and allowing us to have somebody like the Embers come in. So other local acts and entertainers will be there. We'll have 120-plus craft vendors, food vendors. We've also got a beer garden. Things for the kids, rides, rock wall, inflatables. Admission is free. There's going to be wristbands throughout. It's going to be tiered this year to make it better for larger families or larger groups, with second and third bands being cheaper than the first. You can also buy $1 tickets. That's it. You can find us on Facebook. All applications are available online for those who still like to register to participate in different events. Are there any questions?
Does anybody have any questions about the Harvest Festival?
Do you have everything you need from us?
Yes. Yes, we do. Thank you for your support this year.
Now, we have something on here about board may take action. Was there a need about the street closure tonight?
That would be good if we could take action on that. That way we would notify DOT of that.
So we need a motion to approve temporary street closure for the Harvest Festival. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the temporary street closure. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Good.
Anything else? Does anybody
No.
else have any other questions? All right, looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you all.
Item number 5 is an evidentiary hearing on the special use request by Withers and Ravenel related to building expansions and site improvements at Coyote, at 6300 Coyote Drive. Mr. Burglark.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. As stated, agenda item number 5 is a special use permit request to do some building expansions and site improvements for the Coyote facility at 6300 Coyote Drive. The board tonight is being asked to hold a public hearing and take action if prepared to do so on this permit request. The applicant is Withers and Ravenel, and they've requested this special use permit to authorize the expansions and site improvements at this address. Currently, it houses Coyote Tractor, which acts as an assembly, warehousing, and distribution center for Coyote. The proposed special use request would add 265,700 square feet of additional warehouse space, split between 2 phases. This area would be used primarily for storage and light assembly, with some possible additional office space. Per the applicant, an additional 21 employees are projected to work at this site once all phases are completed. And this number might be a little bit dated now, but at the time of the original permit application, and I'll get into that, there were 79 employees working at an existing facility. So this item originally was scheduled to be coming before you in April of 2017. However, the applicant withdrew their application in order to make some additional changes at the request of their client. Those changes included adding about an additional 16,000 square feet to the building, reworking their circular drive, and adding some additional parking and changing the truck loading areas. They've also included a 20-foot greenway easement along the edge of the floodplain to allow future greenway expansion along Buffalo Creek. You have within the permit application or the report the copy of the applicant's justification, which includes responses to the questions that every special use permit has to be evaluated according to. The applicant has requested one variance, which is just a reduction in the required rear building setback from 100 feet to 75 feet. So the manufacturing industrial district typically has this 100-foot exterior building setback established just to create a separation between the manufacturing and industrial zoning districts and surrounding uses. But in order to accommodate their planned building expansion, they're requesting just to minimize that down by 25 feet to the 75 feet figure, just along the north side, along the rear of their building. This wouldn't impact the requirement for the vegetative buffer. There's a 30-foot vegetative buffer to be required, so that would still be in place. It would just allow the building to be a little bit closer to that buffer. Give you a little bit of history, the existing facility was constructed in 2004. They have recently completed some interior renovations to add a second floor within their existing building where the mezzanine previously existed in order to allow for more office space. This site, when it was originally rezoned by the town, there was a condition was attached to it. It was a conditional use rezoning, which required that the special use permit be obtained when development activity occurred on the site due to the proximity of the high school, which is about 2,000 feet to the west. So that's why we're here before you tonight. If it weren't for that one condition, this wouldn't necessarily be required as part of the process. Their request being brought before you includes 86 additional parking spaces to complement the 77 that they have right now on site, as well as the new circulator drive around the building, some new stormwater BMPs, and improvements of that nature. The town's TRC will have to review this. They have reviewed it previously, but they'll take a look at it again when following, if this is approved, in order to view those construction drawings. So there could be some minor modifications as a result of that, but there shouldn't be anything substantial that would change what's being presented to you tonight in any significant way. You have a copy of the proposed site plan included as attachment C of your report, and a simplified illustrative plan included as attachment D. And once we open the public hearing, I'll let the applicant kind of share that with you. And did want to point out that there are some wetlands that are being impacted, but they have gotten approval from the state in order to remove some existing wetlands on the site, but they'll also be creating new wetlands as part of their stormwater BMP request. Pretty much already summarized this for you, but like I said, I'll be happy to take any questions you have, or we could open the public hearing and hear from them.
Let's let Mr. Cawley go over are there any special rules or considerations we need to keep in mind tonight?
There are, with a conditional use permit, it's considered a quasi-judicial proceeding, which means that witnesses are sworn in, testimony is received under oath. Usually you'll hear from the applicant first and give them a chance to have all those in favor of the application come up and speak, and then anyone opposed. If there have been any ex parte communications, if you've been lobbied or anything of that nature outside the hearing process, it's usually a good idea to disclose that, make sure that the applicant and those opposed get a fair hearing. No predetermined biases that would keep you from making a hearing based on the facts and evidence presented tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Ms. Scoggins, I think you're going to provide the oath for those wanting to testify. Anyone who wants to testify, step forward, please. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Does the applicant have a presentation?
Yeah. You can use this if you want to, or
Can council see it based upon?
no, what we actually can do. Well,
I could just use the one. That's
yeah, maybe use that one.
All right, great, thank you.
Mhm.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Don Mizell. I'm a land planner with Withers Ravenel, 115 McKeenan Drive in Cary. And we're excited to be here tonight on behalf of Coyote Tractor, who we've been working with for the past, it's almost 2 years, almost to the date, on their expansion project. Joining me tonight with Coyote Tractor is Mr. Chris Whitley. He'll be saying a few words after I describe the application. Rather than go through all the justification statements that are in that special use permit application, I'd like to refer to those and submit those for the record. I believe that package is in your agenda packet, so if we can do that by reference, that'll be helpful. We do have a copy of the rendered site plan on the screen behind you. I hope you have that in your packet as well. The first slide shows the existing site as it exists today. You'll notice in the lower left-hand corner, the existing building, which totals about 174,000 square feet, along with about 77 parking spaces. If you've been on the site, you'll notice that there's one area of shipping and receiving. I'm not sure I can show that. There it is right there. You can see the cursor on your screen. That's existing shipping and receiving. And behind that is an existing area of cab storage, tractor cab storage. The green area that runs kind of, I guess, northwest to southeast on the site is an existing wetland. As staff mentioned, we have received a individual permit from the Corps of Engineers to fill that wetland, and that goes a long way to making this site a more developable site for our client. It puts that land back in play for expansion. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide shows the site under expansion. It's a two-phase expansion process. Phase one consists of roughly 163,000 square feet that comes directly off the back of the existing building. If you can see that there where my cursor's at. With that, there'll also be an additional area for shipping or receiving. Chris, is that shipping or receiving back there? Receiving in the back. The existing truck area will be shipping. So that'll be divided up and be much more efficient for the operations at Coyote as they have expanded over time. That will certainly help ease the truck traffic currently utilizing the site. In addition, we're proposing to add approximately 86 additional parking spaces and also reconfigure the way employee traffic and visitor traffic interacts with tractor-trailer traffic. There'll be some bypass lanes, some stacking lanes to get those trucks where they need to go and kind of keep the rest of the parking separate from there. Right now it's kind of commingled and proves a bit problematic from time to time. So that's phase two of the expansion. Phase three, and we're showing all this at one time, even though it's going to be phased, so we don't have to come back and do this every time we propose an expansion. Totals about 102,000 square feet of expansion. The receiving area that we just mentioned will go away and be moved further to the east with the second phase. So in total, at full expansion, we're looking at about 440,000 square feet under roof for Coyote's operations. And that will be, and Chris can give you more detail about what's going on inside the building as far as assembly and storage and administrative activities and things of that nature. Number of employees, all those good things. We are requesting a variance, as staff pointed out, to reduce that rear setback from 100 feet from the building to 75. All the buffers that are required, landscaping that is required under your code will still be met. Just that area will go from 100 feet to 75 feet. Stormwater controls will be put in to serve each expansion phase at the total build-out. Some of the existing stormwater measures will be retooled. New ones will be added, all meeting your current codes and regulations. I believe those are the highlights. Again, everything that's in your packet we'd like to submit into the record for evidence, and we'd be glad to take any questions at any point during the public hearing process.
Hello. Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it. I'm sure most of you have heard about our expansion process or consideration for many years now. Before I start, I wanted to kind of give you a snapshot of Coyote, the company, so you have a better understanding of where they came from and what got them to where they are today. In 1986, Coyote Tractor first introduced its first compact line, which was in the U.S. In 1993, Dadong USA was formed as Coyote Tractor. At that point, it was headquartered in Wilson, North Carolina. In 2004, we constructed the facility we're at now, and we moved U.S. headquarters, North America headquarters in that facility. In 2016, we celebrated our milestone of 30-year anniversary, which was very exciting. Currently, we have 2 facilities in the United States serving our dealer network, one here in Wendell and one in Mejia, Texas, just up the road from Waco, Texas. We're also looking at options to open a distribution center in Toronto, Canada as well. So, you know, we're trying to stretch our resources out a bit more to ensure that we can support our dealer and our customer network. Currently in Wendell, the facility operates as I said, North American headquarters. We have professional functions there, everything from your sales, your marketing, technical support, and accounting, as well as, of course, the distribution. The Wendell warehouse, again, distribution center, it does handle all distribution for our parts network, our tractors, utility vehicles, again, for all of the North American market. Where we're at today, the requirement for the expansion. You know, Coyote now has plans to better suit the customer. You know, we want to be in a position so that as this continued growth, we can handle it. We can bring the inbound in, we can properly get the product ready, and we can get it out. So to do that, the scope of the expansion will be an effort to increase that operational size as well as how we utilize our physical site. So that's why it was so important to make sure that the building itself, or additions to the building, was properly placed, so to make sure that flow in and out was correct. Substantial market growth achieved by Coyote brand has proven large part of the tractor manufacturing industry now. The sales forecast projections, we're looking to double at $250 million annually. So there's a significant growth in the business and the marketing holding by Coyote Tractor. This is largely from the popularity of the brand, but also as a new product that we introduce year after year. As we introduce the product, we continue to support that product for many years thereafter. So again, your parts inventory gets larger, your whole goods, all of it grows. This level of continuous growth trends identifies a requirement for our distribution expansion. This is going to lead to the company, Coyote's success, but also we hope it contributes to the town of Wendell growth. It's real important to grow the business community, and that's what we want to do with the town of Wendell. So, as for employment, as Don mentioned, currently we're at 85 full-time employees. We do have an expectation of increasing staff count to 140 within the next 3 years. Coyote would also like to extend internships programs for local individuals that are interested in expanding their tractor technical knowledge. So we have a lot of kids that come to us from NC State that are studying, working on equipment and farming and so forth. So we've made a lot of good relationships. We're very close to NC State in their programs. And they get to test a lot of cool new products for us, and we get to get, you know, the feedback from them. What did you like? What didn't you like? So it's a very good relationship. As for the investment of this project, currently, as said, we're at about 173,000 square feet. We currently warehouse in a dedicated distribution center of 158,000 with 15,000 square foot of corporate office space. The full site expansion plan under 2 phases, as Don mentioned, would ultimately take our full site development up to 439,000 square feet. So a substantial amount of building. Excuse me. The cost of phase 1 expansion is currently estimated at $13 million. Phase 2 expansion is currently under review, pending business requirements, but we are currently developing that requirement because, again, we want to work ahead of the calendar, not behind it. The project scheduling, pending the approval, we would like to have the project phase 1 expansion completed by November of 18. So it's fairly aggressive, but we're confident we can do that. As for the community involvement, I want to mention that. I mean, you guys, I'm sure you've seen Coyote Tractor out and about the town. We try to participate as much as we can. But we believe that, you know, the company itself and the people that work there are very fortunate. So it requires, it should be, that we give back, and that's what we want to do. The whole point of this expansion is, you know, certainly grow the business, but also build the town. We definitely want to be a good corporate citizen for the town of Wendell. We look forward to input and opinions you might have about our company, and the door is open for any time you guys want to come out and visit. But the company, bottom line, you know, it's great pride and respect that Coyote Tractor calls Wendell home. We hope too that town of Wendell has enjoyed having Coyote Tractor here. We greatly appreciate the support and the care. Wonderful citizens of Wendell, very friendly, you know, amazing people. And how close you guys have worked with us. The planning department has been great to work with, you know, and, you know, we try to go to them in advance and talk to them, hey, you know, we have these ideas, what do you think? Any problem with this? So, you know, we want the clarity. We just want to make sure everything is out there. So, again, I appreciate the time and the opportunity. Any questions?
I have a few comments. Coyote has been, for the entire time they've been in Wendell, as far as I'm concerned, an exemplary corporate partner in and around Wendell. And I don't know if this counts as lobbying, but I can tell you that the fire department has gotten much use out of the UTV that was donated. I know that one was donated to the EMS, police, Public Works, I believe there was one. And as far as the manufacturing facilities or just in general facilities around here, I've been in the building numerous times, and it is by far one of the cleanest, best maintained, and with the happiest people that I go in on a semi-regular basis. And I think you've been a great asset to this town, and I'm extremely happy to see that.
Thank you.
Your
Appreciate
purchases
that.
expanded.
Thank you for the comments.
Anyone else?
I've got a question for Don. I noted in the staff's presentation there was BMP requirements for stormwater. This is obviously going to have no bearing on my vote in this matter. It's more of a fact finding because to disclose any law. I mean, I went to Appalachian State and I was attacked on majors, so I respect Withers and Ravenel. Can you tell me stormwater requirements on this site compared to if it was 200 yards into the county or in another local municipality? Can you discuss the stormwater requirements here, if relief was sought or otherwise?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, as best of my ability. We are in stormwater design at present. These are, of course, just schematic plans, site plans. We will be complying with the county's stormwater regulations that are, I guess, or they're either the towns that are enforced by the county or vice versa, but it was a collaborative effort between the Wake County and the town of Wendell. We're looking at several different options for stormwater treatment, wet ponds, dry ponds, some underground treatment as well. But whatever those standards are that are in place today through the town or county or a combination thereof, will meet those current standards for the site.
Okay. Maybe I'll redirect my question to Mr. Bergmark. David, can you tell me, in relation to this site, had this site been, are our stormwater requirements increased, or obviously it wouldn't be specific to the site, but how much of the stormwater requirements, I understand they had to get the release from the Corps of Engineers, but how much of the stormwater requirements are going to be stormwater requirements we imposed on them versus another agency, or the county would have made them do it anyway?
I'm only going to really be able to give you a general answer. I mean, I'd say if you're trying to get at whether or not our requirements would go above what would just be required in the county itself, then the answer is yes, in general. We have some additional water quality type of measures in our stormwater ordinance that the county enforces for us. But in terms of what might be in versus, you know, in one example or in one scenario versus the other, it would really just depend on how it's designed.
I'm going to say, I was going to add this to the GPS portion of our meeting at the end of the night, but if we can look at our stormwater requirements in comparison to both what the county requires as well as surrounding municipalities and bring that back to us. I've been doing some more reading, and I'd like to understand better what we impose in addition to other folks. I want to make sure we're the most competitive municipality out there. That's all I've got, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Burkmark, any closing comments?
Only that, just to, like I said, we have, the applicant's justification kind of addresses those questions that we go through as we're evaluating any special use permit request to make sure that there's adequate facilities in place and it's not going to adversely impact the adjacent properties and things of that nature. So if there were any comments of the board related to any of those, just to think on that. I don't know if there's anything specific that would raise a concern for these items, but again, just keep that in mind. And in this case, the only kind of condition that would be attached, because you can either just approve a special use outright or approve it with conditions. The only condition, unless additional conditions are suggested by this board, would be related to their request to reduce that one setback from 100 to 75 feet. Although that is part of their request, so if the board were to approve it as stated, that would be included as part of that approval.
Right. Anything further, gentlemen? Questions?
I think it's a good community partner as well, too, and I appreciate the thorough presentation tonight. I'll make a motion that we approve the special use permit as requested by Coyote Tractors.
Is that with the condition reducing the setback?
That is as they, well, I guess as they've asked.
As
So,
they
yes.
ask, okay. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the special use permit request for property with the condition reducing the setback as requested by the applicant. Is that it?
Do we need to close the hearing first?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
You asked if anybody else wanted to speak.
Yeah, I did,
Oh, okay.
and nobody did. So, okay. Public hearing's now closed. You want to restate your motion?
I'll be happy to. See if I can do it as well as you did. To approve the special use permit as requested by the applicant for Coyote Tractors.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the request of the applicant. Is there any discussion on the motion?
So it was stated this was still to be reviewed by the TRC, and if any issues come up with that, could be pending that, or they've already looked at it?
Any reviews that would come up would be separate beyond, action taken by the board.
Right.
That will continue through that process of design for stormwater and those types of things. That will all continue.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the special use permit request with the condition reducing the setback. All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Item number 6 is a zoning map amendment to rezone 12.75 acres of land located at 501 West Academy Street from R3 to R4. Mr. Brookmore?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is an additional public hearing for a rezoning request as stated along Academy Street for about 13 acres. So tonight you're being asked to hold that public hearing. And in addition to the 12.75 acres that is within the applicant's request, staff has also brought to the attention of the board that there's a .15, a tiny piece where we have a pump station immediately adjacent to this that is zoned R3. So if the board were to approve this request, town staff would also ask that that .15 acre be included so as not to leave a tiny piece by itself zoned R3. Do you have an ordinance, a draft ordinance attached that you could adopt if you're prepared to do so? The applicant for this case is Lucius Jones. Again, it's 501 West Academy Street, currently zoned R3, which is one of our residential zones, and being requested to be rezoned to R4, which is the next step up in terms of density for residential zoning districts. The property is currently vacant, located in our corporate limits, and the applicants indicated a desire to construct a single-family subdivision on this property. I did want to point out that on November 10th, 2015, the Board of Commissioners in place at that time did vote 3-2 to deny a similar request by Kirk Reitmeyer and Bob Palenko to rezone this property from R3 to R4. The applicant has included justification within his request stating that it's sitting undeveloped since it used to be a farmland. It's adjacent to both industrial and residential, and that the single-family lots in this area are comparable in size to the requested rezoning, and it sits across the street from the town cemetery. And the applicant stated that it complies with the town's land use plan and that it would allow for additional tax dollars as a result of this land being developed rather than undeveloped. With its current zoning R3, this requires a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. The requested designation of R4 has a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. The only difference in terms other than that lot size change is that the R4 district the only difference in the zoning categories is the group care facilities more than 6 residents. That use. Otherwise, all uses are identical, and the only difference is that one use and the minimum size of the lots. The R4 also does require a special use permit for that more than 6 residents to group care facilities. And neither zoning category permits multifamily dwellings. You have on your screen there a picture of our current zoning in place. The yellow is the R3. The area outlined in red is the area that's being requested for rezoning, and we're showing that 0.15 acres sitting there on the kind of northwest corner of it as well. You can see that you have the manufacturing industrial district immediately to the south, kind of backing up to the railroad, and there is existing R4 zoning district that would be adjacent to this immediately on its northern side next to the cemetery. The comprehensive plan defines this area as the infill redevelopment area, or S6, and they state that in this S6 sector, it's already urbanized, well-served with infrastructure, access to services and amenities, and it lists single-family, multifamily, neighborhoods, and commercial, civic, kind of the whole host of uses within this area, even light industrial uses, as this area is close to the core with lots of infrastructure in place. At their August 21st meeting, the Planning Board voted 5-1 in favor of the requested zoning map amendment and included a statement of plan consistency within that, which you have included in your draft ordinance. Staff does find the requested map amendment to be consistent with the Wendell Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and again, if it is approved, then we just requested that 0.15 acres that the town owns be included within the rezoning request, and the draft ordinance is written in that way as attached. So it would bring that, if you notice a difference in the ordinance, it brings it up to 12.9 total acres. With that said, I'd be happy to take any questions, or we can open the public hearing.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Bergmark?
We got one question, Mr. Burbank. The 0.15 acres that staff's requesting, so there is a pump station behind that fence?
Yes.
We might want to call Riley. I don't think they can access it.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Public hearing is now open. Anyone wish to speak for or against the rezoning of this property and step forward? Okay, seeing no one, public hearing is closed. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see you.
I would just like to say that living on Wall...
Can you give us your name and your address?
Living on Wall Street, right at Short, the sizes of the streets through Short, Academy, are not large enough. They're not regulation, they're not wide enough. As I discussed in the last meeting, that when this was going through and trying to sell the property, that we're going to call them regulation. And my looking up and finding out what the street sizes and widths should be, Academy is not wide enough to pull in and put 40 houses, 50 houses, how many ever homes over there to carry that traffic. If you carry it anywhere that Academy goes, is going to go to Wendell Boulevard, where there's already a mess with Academy Crossing, the school, Wall Street, as I said before, Pool, Buffalo, New Falls, or Wendell Falls. There's no stoplight there. There's no turning lane. I leave that street every day, and it is rare that I ever don't spend at least 10 or 15 minutes sitting there waiting for the traffic that's coming off of both Academy and Marshburn through the town. It's very difficult. There have been accidents there. Has anyone been killed? No. But the streets need to be appropriate in order to carry the traffic of housing. And at this point, they are not. I came down Academy tonight, looking around the area, and someone at Pine, Todd and Academy is parked their car. There's no one in the car, and they have half their truck in the lane for Academy. So the traffic is there's not enough parking. Wall Street has people that park the first block on both sides of the street. They're not making use of or don't have parking for driveways. I, in my little car, sometimes cannot get through there, much less there be traffic going both ways. Short Street is not as wide as a two-car driveway. Walk my dog through there every day, and I can't tell you how many times I've almost been hit by people flying through, back and around Wall Street and also Cook. Something needs to be done about that. The streets are not large enough through that little area to take care of another residential area of 40, 50, 60 houses. It just doesn't work. If you ride over, you look at it, you can see, if you've ridden Academy, it is not wide enough. It is not regulation. I've been out and actually checked the measurements of that street, much less Martin that crosses the track off of Cook. It's not as wide as a regular driveway, and people are parked there all the time. It's already a throughway. People wanting to get away from the school area, the cars that fly through, the people that don't live there. I see more people that don't live in the neighborhood coming through than live there. And I'm not working. I'm in my yard. I'm sitting on the porch. I'm retired. And there's just too much traffic that carries through there now for it not to be the appropriate size of the streets. And I don't think that it's a good idea to have that many homes. If it was a retirement facility, like was discussed at one time, it might be different. But with the children that have moved into the neighborhood, the school buses don't even ride the road. They don't even come through there. The kids have to walk 3 blocks to get to a school bus stop. And it just needs something that needs to be thought about, well thought about and ridden before anything is accepted to make a housing area there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize again, the podium was blocking me from seeing you. I just stood up.
That's all right.
Anyone else?
Hi, Regina Harmon, 6616 Tails Branch Road. Do I think this property needs to be developed? Yes. Do I thank Mr. Jones for purchasing it and wanting to put something in Wendell? Absolutely. I still sometimes don't understand the R3 to the R4 and how is that going to make it better for our town or what we're going to get out of it. Do I agree with this young lady over here about the roads and everything like that? That's a given. I mean, you know, if you're going to put houses in an area, you certainly want to be able to get to them. I know that the town has changed some regulations over the past year in order to, when somebody comes in and builds, they have to do certain things in order to build a house of substantiability. I don't know if that's the right terminology here. So all I'm going to say is that this board up here has done some outstanding things over the last couple of years together. And I'm proud of the rules that you guys have done and changed and continue to make prosperous for our community. So whatever vote you do tonight is going to be the best interest of this town for that piece of property. Again, if you vote in favor because this is a good thing for our town, and I really do appreciate Mr. Jones purchasing it and believing in our town enough to continue to invest in us. I think it's wonderful that he continues to do that. But I put it in y'all's hands because you guys have made some strong, positive decisions here lately to bring forth the right things to our community. And I've sat and I've watched Wendell grow in the past 2-3 years like I've never seen it grow before, and you guys all know that. So when you're thinking about this vote tonight, you just think about those things that you've done and you've put in place, and then you just make the right decision because I know you guys are going to. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Heather Wolfgang. I live at 445 West Academy Street, which makes this property my direct neighbor. At this point, I'm fighting two battles as a mom with two kids at Wendell Elementary School and the carpool situation, which leads to the traffic issue in that neighborhood. I wholeheartedly agree with Ms. Frankie in that our street cannot it's not designed at this point for that amount of traffic. My other concern is that right past our house, that property is wide there, and then once you get past it, that's where all the traffic goes that doesn't belong in our neighborhood. And so my concern is you put houses there, and then people realize what the other end of the street, what goes on down there, and then what happens to those houses when people are paying good money for them and then figure out who their neighbors are at the other end. So I'm living there and seeing the difference in past the cemetery. I just don't think that it's a good residential area.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, good evening. My name is William Janke. I live at 436 Wall Street, which is also adjacent to the property you're discussing. And I had lengthy conversations. I've lived there 11 years now with the previous owner, and his difficulty, making it a profitable piece of property with the taxes and such that are paid on it. It was difficult to farm. If you can see the figure that half of it's wooded, half of it's able to be used in an agricultural sense. And I think, having walked it with him before, quite a bit of it is also wet for most of the year too, so I don't know if there's some environmental concerns with that as well. More to the point though, I just basically have to echo their sentiment that the infrastructure, as far as the roads go, seems to be a little bit lacking to put that many more people at that end of the street. I see from the backyard, people tend to go, and I'm not able to properly measure this, but more than the speed limit on Academy Street on average. Wall Street and Short Street, people do seem to drive with some due regard, but there's a lot of children there also, and they're not as wide as they should be. I have difficulty, as she said, at the beginning of Wall Street getting down there, and I've had some discussions with the fire department also about being able to get the larger trucks in there. We've had a couple incidences where they were needed, and the ladder company didn't come, but I was concerned that they might not make it. So my house being down there at the end, I'd like to receive all the help I could get as that goes too. So just something, if you don't mind, to consider when you're making this vote. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public hearing's now closed. Do you have any questions, comments?
Got a couple comments, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
To address these fine ladies and the gentleman that spoke, I share your concern with Wendell Elementary, and that's a different beast that we will have to address. The size of the streets as they are is something that was set out by previous boards and previous plans that were set up, and it is kind of out of our hands in this instance. I can't magically make that street wider. What I can do is vote to take currently undevelopable land and make it developable. Make it so someone can come in and build houses that the free market will determine the price of. If you build houses at free market rates and you have home buyers coming in to build beside your home, economics would say that the other end of the street, as you referenced, will have a whole lot of new people that are there, or the builder is going to take on substantial risk for them not to come. So the improvements that we're looking for typically come when you bring more development and when you bring development similar to what we're discussing tonight. Just so it's noted, I brought up Mr. Bergmark that pump station. The pump station looks like it's containing the jungle. There's a lock on the fence, and I think that's keeping all the weeds behind it. I've ridden that area both in my car and in my golf cart, and I've talked to people down there. I think we have a shot here with this to put in homes that theoretically can be sold to people outside of the town of Wendell coming in, and if for whatever reason they aren't, I can assure you whoever invests the money to build those homes is going to make sure that those issues are addressed because they want those homes off of their books and onto someone else's. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else have anything to comment, questions?
The streets, the short street at Cook has.
Ma'am, your time, I'm sorry, your time, you've used up your time.
So Short Street can be wide.
No, and I'm certainly not saying that none of them can be widened. What I'm saying is I'm not saying that they can't or they shouldn't. I'm saying that the quickest way to make them get widened is by having more homeowners in the area that need it. Right now, this is my thought process on addressing this problem. I'm not sure how long you've lived there or how long the situation has been this way, but at some point it was set up this way. And the only thing that drives change is change.
I've been there for 30 years.
So it's my hope that this will be a solution to your problem and not a challenge to your problem. And to the other comments, as far as parking on the street and other activity that may or may not be occurring, I think that we can ask the police chief as well as planning staff to look into those issues moving forward.
Maybe parking issues on the street.
I think in recent years we have. There were some issues about parking too close to the intersections where there were blind intersections and the town's gone in and marked off some intersection lines of sight and things like that. As far as getting in and out of this piece of property, it's limited basically because of the railroad tracks and what borders it on the back. There are certainly other places in town with more houses that empty onto smaller streets. I think of right where I live at, where the new section of Timberlake dumps into Maddox Street and goes through a pretty tight area back there by the Christian church. And often have to sit and wait for people to pull out so that I can turn in. And that's just the way a lot of the streets are around here. And yes, they're tight, and traffic can be an issue. To the gentleman's comments about getting a fire truck in and out, I can assure you that if a fire truck needs to get back there, it'll get back there. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, and that doesn't mean that we don't need to try to make it a little bit better. But to widen streets means to take people's yards, expand lanes for everything else, and all that comes with it. And I do think a lot of the issue is some of the some of the traffic that is in the mornings and afternoons caused by carpool and the buses from the elementary school. But again, I mean, all that was put in years and years ago when there were way fewer people. To Wake County Schools' credit, a lot of the reasons why you don't see the buses coming and going down the streets anymore is because they recognize how difficult it is to get those large vehicles up and down those streets. And they're trying to get the students to where the buses have to make less stops and there's less weaving through tight streets and the like. And so, like I said, Wake County Schools is trying to address the problems as best they can. And the town's been addressing some of the traffic problems as best as the town can.
At the school specifically.
At the school specifically and on Academy specifically.
Yeah.
I mean, we have marked off lanes in the past. It's been in the past just a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's not something that's not on our radar. I would also like to point out that this brings up just how important it is for everyone to be involved when we review the transportation plan. It comes up and we talk about it, and I went digging through. I was trying to find my copy of the map. I don't think I brought it with me, but you know, a lot of these issues get addressed. So we put a transportation plan in place. Somebody wants to come put in a neighborhood, and we say, well, you're going to have to widen the street because that's going to be more houses, that's going to be more this, more that. You're going to have to build a new road or whatever, a suggestion for where you have to build a new road. And so that process has seemed to help a lot in the past, alleviate some of these concerns. And so, but anyway, those are just comments I had about it.
Infill development, though, brings its own challenges, and that's what this is. So, all right, anyone else?
I would.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, thank you first off for getting up and speaking. I know it takes a lot of courage to stand in front of us and, you know, speak your piece. I've done it before I was on the board, and I was nervous as well. So, but it's good. It's good to get feedback. And I also live on Academy Street, right behind the elementary school. So I feel your pain. I share your concerns. But as several others have said, it's something that we're looking at, and we realize that there's an issue, and we have to keep in mind that we're living in the heart of downtown. So there's going to be traffic. Does it need to be addressed? Yes. Is there things that we could do better? We'll do our best to address those. We'll figure that out. But you know, living this tight in town, I don't think it's fair for us, you know, to say that we can't develop this piece of property into a residential development based off of traffic.
Why would you want to put 50 houses up there when you don't have the roads to take care of them?
The roads are in place. It is tight. I agree with you that it's tight. But if that were your piece of property, you know, would you want someone telling you that you couldn't build houses there?
If there's not roads to take care of it, yes, sir. But there's other people that live around.
Okay, this isn't
That's all.
meant to be a give and exchange, back and forth, so, does any of else on the board
No.
have a comment? I would like to ask the manager to have the planning department take a look at the Academy Street, specifically that end, not behind the elementary school, the end that these folks live at, and to see what we need to take another look at it. Parking on the street, do we need, you know, I'm open to all options. Do we need to, I don't like to come in and create a lot of regulation, but do we need to limit parking to one side of the street? Possibly. I don't know. I want some suggestions and some ideas how we can maybe help with that. That and others. So bring me a bunch of great ideas. All right.
Right there, there's 2 places by the dentist office too.
And I will say this too, I know that the police chief has recently met with the elementary school principal about the traffic concerns with the school. So hopefully, we're gonna come up with some solutions that are gonna help with that. These first few weeks of school are quite a challenge. I don't even have school-age kids, and I've been challenged with it. So it's a challenging time, and everybody can be patient. We're gonna get through it, and it's gonna settle down and just be mildly bothersome instead of as bad as it is right now. What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, we approve the rezoning request from R3 to R4, for the, I guess the total 12.9 total acres, on West Academy Street.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the zoning request for 12, to make it 12.9 acres. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is that everybody? Yeah. All right. Item number 7, the public hearing on the draft Town of Wendell Comprehensive Pedestrian Plan. Mr. Bergmark?
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, this is a public hearing for the draft pedestrian plan, or the comprehensive pedestrian plan for the town of Wendell. We've been working on this for some time, so we're happy to be in the final stages. What the board is being asked to do tonight is to hold a public hearing and consider taking action. Action could consist of adopting the pedestrian plan as written, or with any specific changes the board may desire, or placing this item on a future agenda for additional consideration if it's deemed necessary. The ordinance, the draft ordinance attached would adopt the plan as written, but again, it could be modified if necessary, based on any comments this board may have. I just realized my PowerPoint is missing some slides. Let me see if I just skip past it. All right, bear with me one moment. I'm going to go to my report. So this really started back in 2014. We applied for NCDOT grant, and in April 2015, we're notified that our pedestrian plan proposal was accepted through NCDOT. So the total plan cost is around $32,000, and we had 80% of it paid by the state. Stantec, which I have a member, Michelle with Stantec is here tonight, was chosen as a consultant to help lead with plan development. We've gone through a number of different kind of stakeholder input meetings, and we had a stakeholder committee put together that included business interests, different municipal staff members, DOT, Wake County Public Schools, an ad hoc member of Campo, in order to try to get a well-rounded group looking at this plan. So this committee met several times beginning in 2016 to guide key decisions about public engagement, plan goals. Been present at planning board meetings, and then at the town board meeting tonight. Have hosted 2 open houses. One of those was at the school, as well as been attended different activities or that we've had, such as Big Truck Day, done online surveys, held a bike safety clinic. So tried a number of different ways to try to get input from the citizens on this plan. The purpose of this plan is to really evaluate the current pedestrian system in place, determine where pedestrians want to travel, identify existing gaps and obstacles to the pedestrian system, and then create a list of recommended improvements, whether it's sidewalks, crosswalks, pedestrian signals, or the like. And then, perhaps most importantly, prioritize recommended projects for budgeting purposes, and make any suggested changes to current codes or ordinances or standards. This plan doesn't make any changes itself to our standards, so this is not creating any new requirements for developers that doesn't already exist. We already have pretty good standards in terms of requiring new sidewalks to be installed as development occurs. This plan is really about prioritizing as funds become available to the town, whether it's through some type of grant, or perhaps a fee in lieu of a sidewalk installation, or something else that just becomes available to us. Where would that money best be spent? Where are the gaps? There might be things we're not generally aware of, and where should we first aim, use those funds and direct our efforts? There was I won't go into the details of the online survey, but there was a pretty verbose online survey that was done, and during this, only 10% of participants indicated that they walked for transportation purposes. So in general, it's not people walking as their only means, but they did indicate that a lack of sidewalks in Wendell contributes to the decision not to walk more, in addition to fears of traffic and concerns over distance or time. About half of survey participants indicated they felt comfortable downtown, while local intersections were rated as the least comfortable pedestrian environment, so there were some concerns over crossing intersections as they stood today. You have this whole plan. We can bring up specific pieces as needed, but it's 120 pages in total and kind of goes through, existing conditions, recommendations, and implementation steps with a number of policy recommendations that could be later implemented if the board wished to do so. In general, you have the plan kind of breaks down any projects into short-term, mid-term, or long-term goals to help with that prioritization if we have available funds. You have a number of tables throughout the plan that go through this with construction cost estimates provided for each project, and then maps that'll let you know, to help identify where these different cost estimates, what they relate to in terms of the real world. The priority scoring that they do, assesses, which sites could be prioritized first based on site accessibility. This might be things like proximity to schools, parks, commercial areas or like. Safety, which is a measurement of the average daily traffic along that roadway. Connectivity, in terms of filling in existing gaps and filling in connections to existing facilities. And then a measure of constructability or cost, some things that are a better bang for your buck. There are also 5 enhancement areas that kind of give you a visual before and after shot of what an area could be like if we made certain improvements. And those areas that were really chosen based on input that we received through the process and due to the concentration of destinations and the presence of pedestrians in certain areas. And those looked at 3 sections along Wendell Boulevard near the Tropicana store, at the Hanner Lane intersection at Wendell Elementary, as well as, 4 locations on Wendell Boulevard, because also where Selma Road ties in. And then the 5th location looked at Hollybrook Road near Lake Drive and 2nd Street, right where you have the library and the senior center and some senior housing and some public housing, a lot of areas right next to each other that offer services that people in that area might walk to. So at their August meeting, the planning board did vote unanimously in favor of the comprehensive, or 7-0 in favor of this plan. They had some, I don't know if it'd be appropriate to call them conditions, more kind of comments as part of that recommendation, that prioritization of pedestrian improvements emphasize filling in existing gaps and performing maintenance of existing sidewalks before installing new, non-infill segments. There is already, as part of the prioritization, one of the 4 things looked at is filling in the gaps, essentially. So to a certain degree, that's already built into the prioritization. The second item they had was that the town board evaluate the recommended intersection crossing improvements to determine if the old Battle Bridge Road and Wendell Boulevard should be as highly rated as it is. This is something that I kind of questioned to Stantec, and I think it's really a matter of, I thought initially it's because of the middle school close by. I think it's a matter of when they're looking at things like traffic or nearby accidents, it doesn't necessarily mean, they're kind of applying a buffer. So I think it was just close enough to be tied to that intersection. I don't know in the case of that intersection that you really have many people crossing to the west or to the south, because there's just not much in terms of destinations that people would be walking to. So I don't know that, in my mind, that's really as high of an issue, but I don't know that I would necessarily change the ranking as listed just because it does kind of all follow a set formula. But it maybe is something to keep in mind if we get to the point of making intersection improvements. And the last comment the planning board had was that on page 82, which goes into a number of different policies, there's a policy recommendation dealing with countdown pedestrian signals, and the last sentence recommended requiring pedestrian signals to be installed with new development even when there was no sidewalk in place, and they just wanted that last sentence struck, essentially, so that I don't know how often that would really happen, that you're going to have a pedestrian signal go in, but you don't have a sidewalk leading up to it. But that was their recommendation to delete that. So those are really the 3 comments made by the planning board as part of their review. And I also have, like I said, Michelle with Stantec here to add any additional material as part of the public hearing. And we can, of course, bring up any maps or tables or diagrams that are desired.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Bergman?
David, I have a couple of things. one thing I'd noticed, or one thing I was thinking about too as well, was along with the, intersection at, I guess at the elementary school, I also feel like the intersection there at Main Street, in downtown is a high volume area. I know even patrons from my church have even commented crossing there on Sunday mornings. I know there's more high volume times, but, the crosswalks, I think, are just, from there, even at Cypress, are just, poor visibility. I think there's several things we can do from a safety standpoint. I know even just crossing my family across the road is tough. Sometimes you're waiting a while. I think that should be a much higher priority, and I feel like you as well. I feel like the old Battle Bridge Road intersection, I feel like that should be, even though they recommend leaving it there, I think it still should be much lower because of the, there's no, I don't know if I've ever seen a pedestrian crossing there at all. You have the steps of the church, and you have very few walkers from school from there, so I don't see why that would even need to be on the high priority. I think I'd put that much. I can think of a lot more projects to take care of versus that one. So I would be much more in favor of pushing that one towards a medium or a long range need, unless development changed that would dictate a more prompt response to it. But otherwise, I thought it was very, very good. And I'm somebody who likes to walk when I can, especially due to my proximity to downtown. And well, I'm very aware of, especially if like many of you guys on the board here have had strollers and go into the strollers, you're very aware of where there's poor curbs and poor ramp elevations and all that as well too. So I think those are I think making the town walkable is a huge attraction and a huge the charm of the town. So I think continuing to make the walkability as user-friendly as possible is very important. So.
Yeah, and this is our plan, so we can apply our own, even if it's not based on whatever kind of metrics they applied. Our priorities based on just our experience of living here. We can definitely shift things up and down. I think we just need to be in agreement and be conscious of how we're moving them.
David, can you just mention, I don't want to get off of the pedestrian plan too far, but the TAP program and the areas that was just mentioned, because that is a priority for us.
Right. That's a good point. So DOT had some money that came available for making, or TAP funds, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but for making ramp improvements and in some cases even crosswalk improvements. They had at the state level, so they put out basically a request for any municipalities within your division to apply. So we submitted a number of locations along Wendell Boulevard and 3rd Street and some other streets, and we've been dealing with DOT to try to get some funding through that route. I can't remember the exact timeline, but the intersections that you were bringing up along Wendell Boulevard at Cypress and Pine and along the school, those are areas that we really focused on strongly. So hopefully, there's no guarantees, but hopefully we will be able to get some funding through that TAP program to address some of those areas. But it is in the process, and we are actively working to try to do that.
Okay.
Anyone else? Y'all? Public hearing now open. Anyone wishes to speak or against the comprehensive pedestrian plan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and board members. My name is Michelle Peel, and I'm with Stantec that helped develop this plan. And thank you so much for the time that was invested in developing this plan. One thing that we definitely heard from the citizens was walking is an issue in the town. More people want to get out and walk, and they felt if the town had better connection and facilities and better crossings, they definitely would feel more safer getting out. One thing I heard earlier in the meeting from one of the members concerning the BMPs on a previous item on the agenda was we just want to make sure Wendell is competitive. And that's one thing that walkability can do for a town. If your town is more walkable, you're more competitive with other towns. People want to move to an area where they want where they can walk to places. They don't necessarily want to get in their car and drive somewhere. So definitely increasing pedestrian facilities in your town will make you more competitive, along with other aspects in your ordinances. The stakeholder committee that we had that helped develop this plan worked hard. We went over a lot of issues. The Wendell Elementary was a big topic in a lot of the meetings, and there's a lot of need and concern in that area, and the town has a good future in trying to help the kids get to school safely and get the parents through carpool, and all the residents that live nearby. I feel your grief. I've sat out at that school and watched carpool happen. I saw the kids walking and getting off the bus, and I think that there's a lot that can be done for that area to help. If you have any questions, please let me know, and thank you again for investing in your citizens, and I hope to see Wendell put in a lot more crossing facilities and sidewalks and make Wendell more walkable. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Billy Collins, 302 West 2nd Street. I had the opportunity to read this report in its entirety. Especially the safety of getting our citizens off our streets from walking should be a main priority. This plan is most comprehensive. I want to compliment everyone who was involved in putting this together. This is something that's been a struggle for this town for many, many years, primarily due to the fact that there so many other things become a priority over sidewalks when it really comes down to the funds that are available to do it, to finance it. I would strongly encourage that you pass this plan, but I even stronger would encourage that it not go on the shelf to collect dust. There are, I think I counted 3, if not 4 pages of in the plan of suggested areas where grants and other sources of funding could come from a federal to a private, all areas of it. I know it takes time to be able to search for that, those funds, but without the additional funding from the outside of our community, it cannot be done. But I was very impressed with the plan, by far. Strong work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public hearing is now closed.
Mr. Burmar, what is the I guess the plan of action at this point? When we have this plan here, when we have funds that are given to us, I mean, how do we? I know we've done some different plans with fee in lieu of sidewalk, things like that as well. How do we go about using these funds for these projects?
It depends on the funding source. If it was a fee in lieu of sidewalk, and we created the ability where you could actually install the sidewalk at another location rather than giving the town money and then the town installing it. So in that case, you could look at this, at the prioritization list for where sidewalks should be, and use that to guide your decision on where was a logical place to, if you have 200 feet of sidewalk over there, to put 200 feet over here. And we're already looking at doing that with the fee in lieu that we just recently did over by Groves Deerfield. Outside of that, this plan will help substantiate a lot of the grants that you might go after. So if it's like a Campo, lap project, it can be pedestrian. It doesn't have to be just road improvements. So we could use this to both improve our score on that grant process, as well as kind of justify it and help guide it. So yeah, I think it depends on the type of grant, but in general, this is giving us our focus on where we should, work first.
I like this. I'm sorry. I like this plan. I would be in favor. It was a pretty comprehensive plan. I would like to have a little more time just to review through it. If we could just maybe put this one to our next meeting or, future agenda for approval.
Yeah,
Ms. May has any objections to that?
all right. Let's move this to our next meeting. Is that good with you, Charlotte?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, we'll move this to our next meeting, look at it then. Everyone's had a chance to look at the, here it is, it's big thick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, item number 8 is a discussion of text amendment to Chapter 16, Parks and Rec, and Chapter 14, Section 110 and 111, offenses.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. On Monday, August the 14th meeting, the board received proposed changes to the Town of Wendell Code of Ordinances, Chapter 16, Parks and Recreation, and Chapter 14 of Offenses. As a result of questions received from the board, Chapter 16 has been amended and is brought before you for subsequent review. Basically, the only change from what was discussed on July the 24th and August the 14th is everything dealing with the firearms has been taken out. All the other changes are still in there, stuff like operating hours at the park being dusk to dawn, and all those other items that we discussed at those two meetings. I think y'all had decided to do a little more studying up on the firearms section just to be a little more consistent. So we decided to take that part out since it seemed to be the one thing holding us up from getting these changes passed.
Any questions, comments?
If I can just add, Madam Mayor and Mr. Board,
Uh-huh.
yeah, the one internal portion of Chapter 16 itself, there was a ordinance in there involving disorderly conduct or disturbing the peace through the use of firearms, fireworks, and loudspeakers. As we started looking at the firearms part, it kind of spun off, and we realized we can already address those issues in other ordinances in other sections. So it was really kind of duplicating and, in fact, confusing, in terms. So we recommended the deletion of that because we already have other ordinances on the book that address
Townwide,
that. Yes, ma'am.
not just
Townwide,
park.
that's correct. That is exactly correct. And then we do continue, we've been working with the School of Government regarding the facilities where firearms would be permissible and trying to get the best guidance we can with regard to that. And I've identified some other things that have brought up in conversations with regard to things that quite frankly just hadn't been addressed. So, our intent is to continue to work toward that and be able to bring you back something that you'll be comfortable with. Of course, always seeking any guidance we might can get in that area.
So I think what you're looking for is some guidance to continue working with the school government. Is that?
Madam Mayor,
Uh-huh.
if I may, I met with the police chief as well as town manager and town clerk, in an effort not to hold up Parks and Rec on their other stuff. We're gonna let, the dusk to dawn and really just operating procedures go. To complete that, because of, some duplicity in this, ordinance, we're gonna eliminate 16.3 and hold that for future, use. And then,
Placeholder.
they have, gone above and beyond and working with Dr. Welty at UNC School of Government to come back with a good piece on, the firearms portion. And I would assume that we would likely see that, probably at our next actual meeting with, the attorney here. So if the board would entertain that, I'll continue working with staff on that, to bring back a policy that is clear and concise.
So is that all right with all of you? We'll continue working with the school of government and go forward from there. Is that good?
Mayor, I believe that would be with approval of Chapter 16, with removing that one section of 16.3.
Okay.
Yes,
So we need a motion to remove 16.3, is that correct?
16-13.
1613?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
1613 and then just approve it,
Yes.
the rest of it?
It will
Or
approve.
just 1613?
I would do it just to approve the ordinance, but, we'll sign all of it.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
make a motion to approve the ordinance as written.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a motion to approve the ordinance as written. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Alright.
Item number 9 is a discussion of a policy for our weather camera. Ms. Hughes?
Madam Mayor, members of the board, members of the public. We bring before you today the weather camera policy. We've talked about it a couple of times, and we want to continue the discussion today. With the new installation of the weather camera located on Main Street, the need for the weather camera policy was discussed at the board meeting on August 12th. Most policies reviewed were related to surveillance and security monitoring cameras and did not apply to the proposed use of the camera for the town of Wendell. A draft policy is attached for your discussion. The town attorney and State Department of Archives will be consulted once we get further down the road.
Any questions? Commissioner Joyner?
I don't have any questions. I have a statement. I get the opportunity to read these minutes before we come, form an opinion, have conversation, leave with questions. And I intentionally in my phone have a list of people who a lot of times I don't agree with on things that I would consider to be an expert in their field. I called one of those, expressed my opinion, actually sent them what I said last time and said, tell me why I'm wrong. They highlighted for me why I was wrong. And I completely agree that while my intention to ensure that personal freedom was protected, North Carolina's sunshine laws provide a greater set of freedoms there. The draft ordinance as written, I believe will be honed a little bit when the attorney and archives looks at it. I think that the decision of this board is to look at the number of days we retain it. This camera is intended and will be used for the promotion of Wendell. It is in no way a security camera. In an effort to further demonstrate that, you can go to townofwendell.com at any time you'd like, and you can see it. Even more so, because it's an open source, you can also pull it and put it on your website if you'd like. It is completely open to the public, and if someone so chooses under the law as it stands, you would be able to come in and ask for anything within the time limit there. The reason for the time limit is WRAL and a lot of our promotional partners do not want to risk their SEC license by having a live stream camera that they know Commissioner Boyette would have access to go stand in front of at any given time. So in an effort to work with them, we have to create a timeline accounting for things like long weekends and holidays that we are not dialed in. We are very close to dialed in on this number. This is certainly not something that I think the police intend to use routinely. However, just as you or I can access it, so can they. And there is a provision in here that the custodian of the records will maintain a log of some sort explaining who was requesting the records or who received the records, just to ensure, one, that we are answering those records when requested, and two, we're able to track that we are doing that in a timely manner and complying with the law as it currently stands. So I get to officially take the shoe out of my mouth and say I had the right intentions last time, did a little more reading, got a better understanding of this use, and I believe we're on the right track with this policy.
Anyone else? Any comments?
Mayor, if you're ready to take action on it, I did have one suggested revision.
Okay.
Under deployment and access, sentence reads, cameras deployed under this policy will only be installed in public areas. I'd put a period there and delete the rest of that sentence. Other than that, I'm satisfied with the policy.
So starting with and positioned, scratch that.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments? Do y'all want to take action on this?
Madam Clerk, do you need more time to work with archives, or are you?
I have a standard public relations records chart that they have, and all we need to do is fill it in with whatever we would like for these length of days that we'd like to keep in here, and then we could present that back with you with this, with the policy in hand.
So you want to do that next time? Okay.
It's your pleasure.
Is that good with everybody?
Do you need any more information from us tonight, or do you have what you need?
No, I don't think so. Retain records, I need to know how long we want to retain the records. Mhm.
Policy.
For the policy,
Yeah.
Okay.
7 days.
Per the policy, yes. 10 years. Ooh.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 10 is Wake County Fire Commission appointment recommendation to the Wake County Board of Commissioners. I believe this is going to be Ms. Goggins.
Okay, Madam Mayor, Board of Commissioners, the town's received a letter from Wake County Clerk of the Board noticing the town that the term for Lucius Jones, our municipal representative for the town of Wendell on the Wake County Fire Commission, expires on October 31st. The Wake County Board of Commissioners will make an appointment to the Wake County Fire Commission at its Monday, October 2nd, 2017, regular meeting. If it is the pleasure of the town board to make a recommendation for a municipal representative to serve representing the town of Wendell on the Fire Commission, a letter of recommendation from the town of Wendell must be received by the Wake County Clerk to the Board by September 18th. So, additionally, whomever your recommended appointee is would be followed up with to notify them that they would need to complete an application to Wake County online expressing their interest to serve and represent the town of Wendell. So my request to you this evening is, what is the board's pleasure? And I can draft a letter based on your action.
Okay. Questions, comments?
You got a motion?
Okay.
I make a motion that the Wendell Town Board make as our recommendation for our municipal representative to serve on the Fire Commission, one Lucius Jones, and forward that recommendation to the Wake County Clerk.
We have a motion to make Mr. Lucius Jones our representative. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? I assume all this is going to take place. Mr. Jones, you need to fill out an application. And the Fire Commission meets every other month, starting in January on the third Thursday of the month. And we've started something kind of new, and everyone who represents the town of Wendell out in the world has to come and report about it. So we're going to have you come in here and tell us every time what y'all talked about. So we want to know. Okay. And you'll be on there, so be here because I'll call on you. Okay. Thank you. We'll add you to our calendar. Item number 11, update on Wendell co-locating within the proposed Wake County Public Safety Facility.
Madam Mayor, members of the board, this has been an item that has been ongoing and anticipated for quite some time. It is not an easy decision to make, but you do have a request to make a decision prior to or by September the 15th. Estimated cost for a facility, public safety facility to be located on Wendell Falls Parkway, is estimated at $595,000. We have looked at some other numbers and wanted to put some information together for you. If we were looking at no interest, and this is just taking the raw numbers of 595, looking at that would be approximately $4,958 per month, or $59,000 per year. With Garner having a 10-year buy-in, we've looked at that and requested that possibly we can look at an extension of that. Also, we're looking at approximately 9% of this facility being that of the town of Wendell, and we do have concerns with utility cost based upon the living quarters for fire, EMS, living there and being there for 24/7. Again, we have talked to staff, and that is something they feel that we can work on if that is a concern based upon the amount of time they are actually in that facility. We looked at, also one of the questions that we asked is whether or not we can lease a facility. We indicated that probably we're going to have the same amount of payments. It's going to be fairly close with no buy-in. Estimated cost to build a standalone facility would be approximately $1.5 to $2 million. As we have gone through this process and continue to narrow down and drill down into the information we had, the proposed facility is estimated to be the life of it for 50 years. We've looked at where we are right now. We've been very fortunate. We were able to recently purchase 9 South Pine Street. We have been renting that facility for the last 5 years. It's approximately 4,500 square feet and for $1,700 a month, $20,400 a year. And we were, again, very fortunate we were able to recently purchase that in September of this year. The purchase price on that was $375,000. At the time when we upfit that facility, it was $125,000, bringing that total investment by the town, other than other minor maintenance issues, to $495,000, approximately $500,000. The breakdown on that, we've spent $102,000 basically on rent, $495 purchase and the upfit, for a grand total of the $597. So when we look at that compared to building that is approximately $595,000 to purchase it, the interesting part with jointly working with the county is that we would not actually own, or the town of Wendell would not actually own the land beneath that area that we would occupy. Again, we've taken and looking at this with removing about $105,000 that we would be looking at paying somewhere around July 1, 2018. That's for the land and our architectural fees. So we would have approximately $490,000 that we would have to finance in some fashion. Based upon 20 years, we've looked at what a range there, again, with 0 interest, $2,042 a month if we were looking at 20 years, as well as up to close to $3,000 a month if we were looking at 4% interest. Actually, we think that the interest rate would be somewhere in between, and again, the county has indicated that they are interested in working with the town on financing. What we would receive in a facility of this size would be, in addition to renting a spot or a commercial facility, it would have a large meeting room that the town could use and police could use, that we would share with the EMS and fire. We would also, in addition, have workout facilities with EMS and fire, controlled access, increased security because of it being occupied 24/7, And the number that you have is completely upfitted and equipped with that coming at $595. We've taken a look, and again, it's often difficult, but what would it be like if we had to rent commercial property? And we used, for that number, $20 a square foot. I do believe if it was a simple retail building, that it would probably be cheaper than that. But we did look at what some of the other communities were paying, what they were getting for the square footage, and we saw that they were much more, I guess, trimmed down. They didn't have the other amenities that we were looking at, and looking at approximately, again, the $3,000 per month, $36,000 per year. And renting would be $720,000 at the end of 20 years. And this is just an option or ideas for leasing. Again, we'd have to have upfit costs. We use the $125 because that is what we use in the facility down here on 9 South Pine Street for a total cost of $845,000 over a 20-year period of time. And that would be with no buy-in. And so it is rather complicated. It is a lot of money. One of the things that makes this very interesting is the town of Wendell is currently a little over 6,500 population. The area to the west of a current downtown corporate limits in 10 years is going to have a population by itself of over 10,000 people. The overall population of the town is planned to triple in 10 years, and that again is with no economic downturn, significant economic downturn. With what we have, and you have seen already tonight with Coyote and other entities coming in, the town of Wendell Police Force will be spending a lot of time at our interchanges, whether that we have a facility there or not. We have additional commercial development that we anticipate going down on Wendell Falls Parkway, as well as the traffic on the interchanges and other retail development. That will demand a lot of our time when you look at, and I'll just say, use our adjoining communities and those retail establishments. You will see police officers that are almost dedicated to serving those areas because of the traffic. And we do feel, whether we have a facility, whether it's with Wake County, no facility, or we rent space, that we will have to have a presence out there to serve our people in some fashion. So we do anticipate that coming. Whether it's a decision that's made tonight, we do feel that with what we see coming down the pipeline, that in the next year that we will make a decision to locate in some form or fashion in that area at least a substation. And we are not talking about relocating our main facility in any way. So I'd be glad to try to take some questions. We also have Mr. Kay here, the finance director, police chief, and they may be able to assist.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Piner? Mr. Boyette?
Currently, how many residents are in Wendell Falls and the surrounding
We have,
corporate limits out there?
I believe we have a couple of hundred that are occupied, homes a little over 200 and 2.53, so we probably have, I would say, close to 500 people that have been out there in the last 2 years.
Ms. Piner, in your estimates on that, I'm gonna start at the bottom, work my way to the top.
Okay.
Section 3, the commercial rental idea, how many square foot? I saw that it was $20 per square foot, and I saw that it's $3,000 a month. What was the square footage we used there?
Roughly the same that we did with the EMS facility, the 1509.
So I've got a variety of questions here. One, obviously, I think it's staff's position that we can't compare the cost between Pine Street and Wendell Falls. That said, in this setup we did. The the calculations, I noticed there's $102,000 total added into the total cost, for rent of the 9 South Pine Street to come up with that total number.
Yes.
This akin to me attributing, renting a car for 10 years and then calling the car that I buy at the end of 10 years the cost plus the rent that I paid when I wasn't owning. So I took that out. And the facility on South Pine Street is 4,000?
Approximately 4,500, yes, sir.
4,592. So if we take that out, that puts us at a price per square foot of $107 per square foot, upfitted.
Correct.
That's low, but I don't think we can attribute the fact that we rented before we owned to be the total cost there. Now, if we use the same logic and go out to the proposed station, I heard that the two things, so there's a 0% and there's a 4%. The 0% I'm assuming is the county.
Well, again, it's a range. You know, I would love to ask them to let us make payments on that, not charge us any interest. And actually, I don't know that, based upon loans we're currently seeing numbers, I think 4% is high. I truly think it's going to be around 2.5 to 3%. I think it'll be somewhere in the middle. But that was to give a range.
Okay. And the other piece is the Garner facility was financed, so if we're asking them to do what they did for Garner, they financed that at 10 years.
That is correct.
So we're asking for a lower interest rate and twice the amount of time. Why didn't we finance the first $105,000? Or why aren't we looking to finance the first $105,000 that would be due July 1, 2018?
Well, one of the indicators that from talking with county staff is that they have moved and some of this money has already been fronted and that they were moving forward with the building or the design and that they wanted the town to participate. I don't believe from the communication that we have, and I did not directly ask, but I do not believe they would finance the 105.
So to bring in perspective here, we have two ranges. One is the 0%, one is 4%. The costs are listed out. $595,000 is the absolute cheapest we could get it for. $817,560 is the most projected out here. That's a variation of $220,560. I've got several concerns. I brought some of them up at the last meeting about how the price drops. Now I think we can all do a little bit of logic there and say, well, they decided to eat some of the community space, or maybe they reduced our portion of it. But we're sitting 4 days from when the county wants an answer.
Yes.
And we don't know what the percentage rate would be, who would finance it, if the county would finance it. If we ask the county to finance it, the projection here is based on us asking the county to do twice as much for us as they've ever done for anybody else. The additional things the additional things added, increased security as it being occupied 24/7. Increased security for who?
Well, I think that the security of the facility and the building itself.
I'm interested in providing security for the residents of Wendell Falls, not a building. And the other piece of that is having worked in a combination facility. I've never worked in a combination facility with police, but I've worked in one with fire. And when they want a fire permit, they don't understand that I work for Wake EMS and I didn't do fire permits. So it was my job to go answer the doorbell on the other side of the building, inform them that they needed to go to another station or call somebody. Meanwhile, the things I was supposed to be doing, I wasn't doing because I was tasked with another agency's work. Now, I pulled out the soft cost, so the additional, I made the price of the new facility $490,000 and said that we're gonna take out the upfitting that the county estimates in. And that puts it at $324.71 per square foot. There's a lot of concerns here, and some of them have been addressed. You know, the county came down, I think it was 35% we determined at the last meeting on those costs. The county showed up, the county's come down on the cost. I can't vote in good conscience on anything that may have a fluctuating interest rate that could incur $220,000 of additional cost. Can't do it. More than that, I don't think it's good policy to build buildings for people that don't exist in places that don't yet need them. It's frustrating to me, however, that given this opportunity that we see, or we've identified as having a 50-year lifespan, we're sitting 4 days from when they want to know if we want in, and we still don't know answers to questions like, would you finance the first portion? The $490,000 we had to figure out later on, but if we agree to the first portion, we don't know where that's coming from. I don't understand how in our packet it says the board may take action. I don't see where we could take action. I don't see where I could form a motion to take action on this. This is beyond disappointing. It's frustrating, and I feel like we have done a disservice to ourselves, and I've done everything I know to do as far as asking questions and asking questions and asking questions, and for whatever reason, those questions aren't getting back to us. I hope that we can evaluate the situation and figure out how to do it better in the future. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I'll just take the other shoulder here. I kind of have to agree with a lot of what Commissioner Joyner said. However, even still, at $595,000, and say if I give us great rates in 20 years or whatever you need, I still feel like most of our, I still feel like it's going to be a, I guess while a police station is a place to help house the police officers and give them other facilities, I still feel like they do so much of their work in their cars, and they do so much of their work out in the community, that I still feel like it's just a lot to spend on on just a station for them to call their second home, or however you want to word it is fine. And I could agree that, and I think that's a lot to spend for that type of building, for a need that we don't have yet. And while I like to have foresight and look ahead in the future, but I just felt there's a lot of other unknowns, you know, that we don't know yet, and to make that big of a jump with so many unknowns for a need that we don't have, I feel like it's just a stretch. So that would be my recommendation, that we do not move forward with this.
Other comments? Commissioner Boyette?
I do believe that in the future, perhaps the near future, we are going to need a presence out there, and perhaps not just police. The town might need a presence out there more so than just a police substation. With that said, I don't think there's anybody on the planet who's a better procrastinator than I am. But even I brought this up over 2 years ago when we were doing budget talks, that this was on the radar. It hasn't been a secret that this has been coming up, and it's almost felt like there's been a current pushing against us to get this project done, and I'm not sure where that comes from. It is disappointing that here we sit 4 days before the county's basically saying it's do or die, and you know, this should have been squared away, yes, no, or maybe so, a long time ago. Yeah. You know, yes, we need a presence out there. I don't know that we need it immediately when perhaps 10% of our population lives out there at the current time, or maybe less than 10%. I don't know if it's something we move forward on now. So, and at the current price per square foot and for what we will be getting for the amount of money that we'd be asking our taxpayers to pay, I don't think it makes much fiscal sense, to co-locate in this building at this time at least. Not with the current state of affairs.
Anyone else?
I would say that Commissioner Boyette, that you bring up a very good point. I think this process for town staff would be tremendously helped if we had a comprehensive facilities plan for looking toward the future, knowing what our needs were going to be, where we were going to go as we talk with other jurisdictions.
Ms. Piner, it does not take a comprehensive plan to know what something costs and what the finances are before you bring it to this board. It doesn't. Y'all brought this to us.
Yes, sir.
We've talked about it.
Yes, sir.
I'm not arguing the money. Even if I wanted to vote for it, there's nothing for me to vote for. There's no finance here. There's no plan. This isn't part, yes, sure, we need nice things. I would hope that any comprehensive plan you come up with would not be the county's building something so we want to attach onto it. It would be, we need a presence and this is where we strategically need to locate it. But it does not take a comprehensive plan to ask the questions like, would you finance the first $105,000? It doesn't. We can roll to the comprehensive plan. I'm happy to talk about those things in the future, but the failure on the next step is us not having a next step to choose from. If you want me to take the blame, give me something I can vote on. I'll happily vote against something if I believe it's wrong, but I don't even have anything to vote on here. We're losing this of no vote of our own. And I don't think that there's any plan in the world short of saying, please ask how much it costs and how we would finance it, being included in a comprehensive plan that would directed you to fix this problem. This is something we got to know.
Well, I absolutely agree that it would certainly help. However, with the information that we have, talking with the banks, if we were going to go outside for financing beyond Wake County, we would have unsecured collateral. This is a very complicated matter and numbers that we did not have available. I agree.
Right. I guess my argument is that we have to foresee things like that. I understand that the bank says, sounds like a lot of money with no collateral, but as Commissioner Boyette said, we've been talking about this for 2 years. It didn't sneak up on anybody, and putting it in a plan wouldn't have done anything any different. We could pull this money out of the general fund tomorrow if we wanted to. But we don't have the answers.
Any other comments? So how do y'all want to proceed? I hadn't heard from a couple of you. You want to co-locate in the spot or not?
Do we need a motion if we choose not to? Or do we just,
I don't think so. Do we? I don't think so. Do we?
Wake County would like direction of the board as we move forward, and it would make it much
In the
clearer
form
for all
of a
of us.
motion?
That would make it clear for staff as well as Wake County.
so I'll make a motion then, that we direct, Wake County that we are, not interested in co-locating in, EMS, fire, police facility, public safety facility at this time.
Okay, so we have a motion that we're not interested in co-locating in the facility. Is there any discussion on the motion?
If we could include in that letter our sincere condolences for whatever time we cost the county.
Yeah, we're real sorry about that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Item number 12 is an update on temporary signs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. I'll give just a brief update and then just find out what the pleasure of the board is. To give you a little bit of history of how we got to where we are right now, back in March of 2017, we held a public hearing to discuss proposed changes to temporary signs. At that hearing, it was decided that there would be some changes to the sign chapter outside of the section that dealt with temporary signs requiring a permit, which is 12.7D. So there were changes outside of that section that were made. However, for the temporary signs requiring a permit, that section, the ruling was to suspend enforcement of that section for a 1-year period, starting at that public hearing date. You have on page 3 of your report a summary of those changes that were made outside of section 12.7D. Let me get to that section. And then you have items that are in red, or if, I'm not sure if yours was in color or not, but of that summary of proposed changes at the March hearing, items 1, 2, 3, and 5, those were items that were not changed, that did fall within that 12.7D, which dealt with changing kind of the time period for small ground signs, how long they're valid for, how many signs were included within a permit, some new language on banners, new language on feather flags as a temporary sign category, as well as language related to mobile signs, removing that and just allowing it to kind of fall into the all other temporary signs section. So there's kind of a catch-all, a list of 4 different sign types, and then a catch-all for anything else that might be permitted for that 14-day period or whatever the period would be. Outside of that, we did again make some changes to other sections outside of the temporary signs requiring a permit that were listed as 4 and 6 and 7 of that summary. So we're midway through that in suspension of temporary enforcement, but it was requested that this be placed back on the agenda tonight for discussion, so I'd be happy to go into more detail or take any questions you may have.
Commissioner Lutz and I jointly asked that it be put back on because of some current stuff, so go ahead.
So I was going to say, I had some of the same concerned citizens express concerns to me that Ms. Cambier expressed to us earlier in regards to the truck with the sign on it in front of the school. I'm the standpoint where I'm already kind of would much rather have some more regulations on the temporary signs, but this one in particular just kind of stood out to me. What classification does this fall in? Is this a mobile sign? I mean,
Yeah.
he parks it. I guess it's mobile, but it.
That would fall under the mobile sign category of those
Okay.
of those temporary sign permits.
All right. I mean, it would be of my great pleasure if we could immediately begin enforcing on a mobile sign category. I know we don't really necessarily have one. We struck it from our. Do we even have a mobile sign category to?
So it's still there because we didn't actually make any changes to that section.
Okay.
If we, if we started enforcing that section, that wouldn't mean you can't have mobile signs. It just means there'd be a time limit attached to it. And because if you were looking at just kind of, well, let's just delete that as even an option within the temporary signs requiring a permit, I looked at, well, could it then just still fall under that catch-all? There's all other temporary signs. There are some limitations on that catch-all category. It still has a height limitation. Can't be more than 7 feet, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't still put it there under the current language, and it would fall under that catch-all category and still be permitted for whatever that time period is. So I think if our goal is really to prohibit that specific type of sign, I think we need to look at, is it when it's on a vehicle, or if that was placed on the ground, would you still have the same objection? And because we probably have to make a little bit more changes than just striking out that one section.
I think certainly on a vehicle is tacky. I think on the ground is just as tacky. So I mean, right there in front of the school, and everybody's and the car just kind of just seals it for me. So whatever we can do, whatever language we need to draw up to, I think to.
And is it just when it's electronic, or if it was like one of those switch out letters?
I think if we kind of put it on the mobile aspect of it, I think if we stick to that. I think that would be fair enough. I don't.
So you don't care if it's on the ground?
Well, I don't like on the ground either, but I don't know how we draw the language to. I mean, I guess I'd leave it to you to draw some language.
What about the size of the sign?
There are some limitations.
Because it's big.
So, yeah, and I don't know what the dimensions of that one, I don't think it's sitting there right now. Well, I don't know. I've actually seen it not there, and then it showed up again for at least a day, and I don't think it's there at the moment, but.
In the morning and then leave it
Yeah.
one day.
It
Okay.
was there today, I checked on it.
It's
Okay.
very mobile sign.
But, so, there are limits, there are some size limitations, under that catch-all that I talked about. So I said even if we took away the mobile sign category, it could fall under that catch-all. The catch-all has a maximum size, but it's 32 square feet, so I mean, that could be 4 by 8, which is fairly big. So, yeah, we could definitely limit that size down further, and we make it specific to electronic boards if we want to, or not. I think we probably need to just talk to make sure we're really addressing all the concerns. I don't want to make a change, and then they just, pull it out of a truck and put it on a trailer, or pull it out of a trailer and put it on the ground, and we still really have the same issue.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to limit it to digital because there's still the option. If you think it looks bad, somebody could make a sign out of poster paper and do the very same thing. So if we object to it, we object to that, no matter what. So I wouldn't want to limit it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to sit down in whatever format we want and try to make sure we're hitting, all the concerns.
That we were.
I do think, though, I mean, we would have to go back to the planning board because this wouldn't be, one, it's been quite some time since they looked at it, but it wouldn't be what they had even proposed. At this point, we'd be making some additional change. So we would have to procedurally go back through, run it by them, and then come back before this board for a hearing to make the change. We could, if it was just a matter of not suspending the enforcement anymore, we could make that change without going back through processes, but that doesn't really address this concern.
Now, David, is that a specific sign they're talking about, is that permitted currently?
Well, right now, since we're suspending enforcement, it's not required to be. If we put enforcement back in place, they would have to get a permit, but then it could be there. It would just be limited on how long it could be there, and they'd have a certain amount of times a year and that kind of thing. So if our goal is to not allow that to be a permitted type, we'd have to go and make changes to the actual ordinance.
A couple of things. Looking at the agenda, we've talked about this for 5 different meetings just in the past 365 days. I said it a couple of weeks ago, I don't feel like I've, had a full year on this board unless we talk about garbage cans and temporary signs. I kind of want to go back to at least from the first time I remember this coming up was the reason the whole suspension of the rules started was to accommodate a certain entity in and around Wendell who wanted to put up temporary signs and they weren't being allowed to, and so we said we'll suspend the rules and see how it works, and then we kept pushing it off I seem to want to be more in favor of let's fix the rules instead of just suspending them, because this is the sort of thing that happens. Is now that we have something in town that the libertarian in me doesn't care how tacky it is. If we decide to ban things that are tacky, I'd be driving bulldozer through a lot of stuff in town. My concerns with this particular sign are it's located in a school zone. It's located directly beside the crosswalk, the main crosswalk for children walking away from the school. It's located in a curve. The message on it changes very fast and advertises businesses that aren't in Wendell. Whether it's on a pickup truck, a trailer, or hanging from a blimp, none of that matters. It's parked at an intersection where it blocks sight lines coming off of Magnolia. Those are my concerns with this sign, and that because we've suspended enforcement, we have no way to remedy any of these situations. Just the mere fact that it's a video sign in a school zone that's operating at the beginning of the school year when everyone's trying to figure out that whole area again, which we've already hit on how bad of a traffic situation is out there, should be enough to say that it's, whether or not it should be allowed in general, to me, it's a public safety thing. But by the sheer fact that we've talked about this roughly every 2 or 3 months, on average. I'm very much in favor of sitting down and figuring out, and perhaps not at a regular Monday meeting. If we need to have a special meeting to figure this out so we can put it to bed once and for all, I'm all for it. Let's do it. I would like to get it straightened out. I'd like to hear from all the parties that we have accommodated over the years and get input from them. And if we can get a comprehensive plan done for this, to address these temporary signs and signage overall, whether it be temporary, mobile, lighter than air, you know, I didn't realize we had any lighter than air signs in town, but they do happen. You can have a balloon, I suppose. Then I'm all for that. I think we need to sit down and hash these things out instead of whacking a mole every 2 months, is what I think we need to do. But as far as I'm concerned about that mobile sign, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not in this venue to talk about, but it needs to go. In my opinion, it's a public safety hazard, and it needs to go.
Has it been looked at from a public safety standpoint? I mean,
I've not talked to like the police chief or anything about it specifically, so we could definitely have that conversation. It is changing messages too quick, and that is something we could potentially still enforce. And that Daryl brought that up to them. Like I said, then it did disappear for a little while, and then it came back. It's these temporary signs are very hard to really nail down too, because often who we are fining is the property owner. Not you may not even know who operates this thing, but and so then. Now, maybe if you send a violation notice to the property owner, then maybe he doesn't give his permission, and then maybe we could say that it's trespassing on his land and kind of go down that road. But it is a difficult thing to enforce, and it gets more difficult when you don't have a permitting process actively in place.
Well, I think I think Commissioner Boyd had a much better worded statement than I did. It is a safety issue, and it would pain me to think we're going to have to go to the planning board again to take care of a public safety issue. So is there anything that we can do tonight is there anything we can do now to, I guess, look at it from a public safety standpoint, or, do we need to, or to even means in enforcing? I don't know. What do we need to do tonight to?
That's a difficult question for me to answer. I don't know if there's necessarily a motion that can make, 'cause it's a matter of, are there rules in place right now that we can quickly act on? I've not looked at it from a code of ordinance standpoint. There might be something there, or maybe from a site triangle standpoint. Again, I haven't gone out there and measured it to see would it fall within a site triangle. If it is violating something along those lines, then I think we could take quick action, but it's a matter of verifying if it is violating one of those ordinances outside of just what's our normal temporary sign regulations. Unless...
Have you considered just withdrawing the suspension?
Yeah, that's what he suggested.
So if we withdrew the suspension, then I suppose we could say you need to remove this immediately unless you get a permit, but then they might just say, here you go.
It's step one.
Yeah.
It's not the end all. It's just the start.
But it doesn't have any Wendell advertisement on it, so it's in violation anyway. Sorry.
That's not a regulation anymore. That was at one time, but we actually, through other legal cases that have occurred, that's actually something we can't really control anymore, is the content-based. Yeah.
If we did suspend it and we did permit it, could we create some guidelines that would allow it, that would make it go away? Make it not worth it? I guess size, distance from the street.
We could.
Proximity to intersections, I don't know.
Yeah, we could look at, changing our ordinance, but that's not the immediate fix. Now, Jim's right, if we resume enforcement, then it may be that they pull it, I don't know if they're gonna consider it not worth their while, but it may be they at least temporarily pull it, but they might come right back. Yeah. We could, in the meantime, also look at changing our rules, but then we have to go back through the planning board, come back to this board, so that
step's gonna take time either way. I think the first step toward developing regulations that you're satisfied with is to withdraw the suspension.
But that particular sign, as long as that, I don't know if it would be the sign owner or property owner, as long as they got a permit, he could back the thing right up there after he goes down to town hall and gets a permit, right? Yeah,
It could be.
I don't agree that, suspending, I don't know.
Then that makes all the small signs
Fall in
around
that same
town.
category.
Yes, so that's creating a lot of work for y'all real quick,
Could we
permitting.
could we verify quickly if there is any kind of public safety violation?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I can get on that tomorrow, but I'd have to look and see. Yeah.
Why don't we look and see first, and then if there's not, explore other options in the very near future, whether that's a special called meeting or whatever we see fit, but.
David, when you're looking at that, my concern is the businesses that we told in March we were given a year to that have gone out and bought the small signs that are sticking up on intersections. So I'd like to not cut our nose off to spite our face.
And I don't want to create a lot of busy work for y'all. And I feel like every little permit for every little sign, that just seems like a lot of busy work for y'all. I do have one comment I want to make. Let's see. We had, said that we were going to suspend the enforcement with 3 exceptions, that they had to be located behind the sidewalk, behind the ditch, or 5 feet from the edge of the pavement when no sidewalk or ditch was present, that they must be upright or properly maintained, and no non-governmental sign can be attached to or painted on power poles, traffic signs, and things like that. I ride around in my golf cart a lot too, and I'm within an inch of pulling a bunch of them up, and y'all are gonna find them out there in the pit, because I see them all the time in violation of those things, and I have harped on that. The leaning over signs, the signs, between the sidewalk and the road. I'm trying as hard as I can to create a compromise position between the people who want them and the people who don't. And this is all we have, and I really feel like we're just not enforcing that. And I know that that's a lot of busy work, but so is writing out a permit for every single little yard sign that somebody wants to. And I think if we create a culture of, we're not gonna let you have it there, they will stop. In the meantime, I'm happy to pick them up and collect them from my golf cart for y'all, because y'all must be shorthanded on that or just not paying attention to it. Because I almost stopped the other day, there were like 4 in one spot. I almost stopped, and my husband talked me out of it, but that won't happen again. So let's please try to enforce that.
Okay.
From now on, the ones that are not where they're supposed to be, and they're in clusters, there's 4 or 5 in a spot. And I think that will make some of the folks who object to them a little bit happier, because they won't be splattered all over town. They need to be purposeful. The intention was to help some businesses promote their business. And I think that in some instances, and I guess I'm editorializing, but what's happened is, well, they got a sign, so I need 5 signs. Well, they've got one, so I need some. And everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon, and what they don't realize is they're diluting the effectiveness of it by having so many. And that's just my 2 cents. All right, do you have everything you need? We're gonna come back to this in maybe in 2 weeks. Is that too
Sure.
soon?
Yeah, I'll look to see if there's any immediate public safety related items that we can use for immediate enforcement. I'll make sure that if there's some that are, those that are within the 5 feet of the road or too close, get pulled up.
Or I'll bring them to you.
And then we'll reconvene here, and I'll just, if there's any other direction, just
Okay.
give it to the manager, and then we'll get on it.
Thank you. Item number 13 is our snapshot. I have a few things I want to add to it, if no one else has anything they want. The sign at the town square was damaged, it's been probably 2 months ago. So I want to put that sign on there and get something done with those poles sticking up out of the ground. It looks really bad.
What would you like for the poles just to be removed? It may take some time before we can actually get another sign
Let's take them
fabricated.
down. I saw some kids hanging on them a couple of days ago. I think let's just take them down, and new signage may even wind up in a different spot. I think there might be a better spot for it anyhow. put that on there. Also, it's been over a year, we discussed some last final touch painting and things in this building. The 3 bathrooms, not the one in the vestibule, but the 2, say, one back here and one back there, and maybe it's 4 actually, when I count them all, were to be painted on the inside. And I feel like we've been talking about that and hadn't done it, so I want to add that. And I also want to add painting the hall and offices for code enforcement and IT. I feel like we've gotten our building to 95% and stopped. And so they don't have to be done tomorrow, but I want to get it, shine some light on it, and get some of these things taken care of. Does anyone else have anything they want to add and discuss? Yeah, Commissioner Joyner?
Railroad tracks on Hollybrook.
Yes, the railroad tracks on
There's
Hollybrook.
metal spikes where the wood's gone away from, rattles the front of your car. I mentioned this earlier during the Coyote presentation, but I'd like for us to look at our stormwater regulations and get an understanding of how they compare to the county and then the surrounding municipalities.
Okay. Anything else? Where do we stand on Coffee with a Cop?
Well, what we were doing with that, I've been working with the police department. They've been coming up with, I think, some very creative ideas. Coffee with a Cop is a specific brand that if you follow that, their logo, that I think it kind of limits us. I think what our police department is wanting to do is to branch out and to make sure that we can get out to those that won't come maybe to a coffee shop, and look at diversifying with, I guess, with that as, maybe as a premise, and it doesn't have to necessarily be coffee. We're looking at starting it once a quarter in November, and we're working out those final details now. But I really like the ingenuity and looking at where we want to reach and meet with the people, and I think they've come up with some really good ideas, and we're refining those.
And when are we going to hear about that?
Well, we're wanting to do it, we've talked about it, wanting to do it in November as the first one, so that's something that we can probably get finalized in the next, by the end of the month.
So what are you talking about doing? Having lemonade out in the road? I mean, I don't know what you're
That
talking about
might be
doing.
an option, that could be. Yes, ma'am, just exactly those sort of things. Looking at where the kids are, looking at where the people are, where are those individuals and citizens that are moving in that we need to make contact with? Where are those individuals and citizens that maybe wouldn't come to a coffee shop? So I think that we're going to be coming up with some really creative ideas, and it will be more diverse than just coffee at a coffee shop.
Okay, well, we have a lot of citizens that will go to a coffee shop too.
That is certainly an
I want
option.
to do that as well.
I agree. I think we
Very,
can
very,
diversify and we'll be able to do a good job.
Okay. Anything else, y'all?
If I can add, and I would assume that the GPS is the appropriate place to put this, but the loans we approved in the last budget for equipment, we can get updates on when equipment's being purchased and what we're purchasing and how it's coming, so we know how to track that.
Yeah, I'd like to know exactly what was bought.
Okay.
Just the timelines, and so we know we're being able to get that stuff into use. Madam Mayor, for a motion?
Yeah.
Move the board go into closed session to discuss a matter pursuant to North Carolina General Assembly 143, 318, 11A, number 6, personnel.
All right. Motion to go in closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. We're not adjourned, we're in a closed session. Okay.
It is.
warming up chairs.
Come on, honey.
Yeah, I have Eastwood Education Foundation board meeting. Oh, gosh. I apologize. Right, real quickly, item number 14.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
motion to go back.
We need a motion to go back into open session. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get us out of here.
Make a motion. Move.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 14 is update on board committees by town board meetings. First, Fire Advisory Board, Commissioner Joyner.
At the fire board meeting, we talked about the budget and the new budget.
Okay. I attended the Triangle J Council of Governments, Region J Mayors, County and Chairs meeting, and we had a presentation from the North Carolina Rural Center about what they do essentially in North Carolina. It was very interesting. I gathered a lot of interesting information, and some of the things that they work on don't really apply to Wendell, but some of them might. And so I've got some things I'm going to look into and see if there's something we can do, some financing things, some economic development things that we've actually talked about recently about some financing things as far as businesses coming to town and stuff like that. So I'm going to look into that and see if that really applies to us or not. We're a bit of a rural area in an urban county. That makes us kind of unique. So we have the challenges of being rural, but yet we have the advantages and sometimes the disadvantages of being near an urban center. So that makes us kind of unique. And they actually had some good suggestions for economic development in that situation. So it was a good meeting and I learned a lot. Item number 15 is Commissioners' Reports. We'll start with Commissioner Carroll.
No comment.
Mayor Pro Tem Lutz.
None tonight.
Commissioner Myrick.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Commissioner Boyette.
Batting down for Irma, coming tonight.
All right. And Commissioner Joyner.
No comment.
All right, real quickly, I want to remind everybody of the annual Mayor's Award. Information about submission for that is now on our website. It has its own page. If there's someone who has done something or who works selflessly and kind of behind the scenes in the town or does great things that you'd like to have recognized, go to that site and fill in an application and send it in. I believe the deadline, Ms. Scoggins, what's the deadline for that? Do you know off the top of your head?
Friday, October 13th.
Friday, October 13th is the deadline, so you've got a little bit of time, but go ahead, don't wait till the last minute. The last Bluegrass Picnic was held this past weekend, and they're going to resume again next spring, possibly at a later time to help accommodate for heat a little bit. I want to thank Mr. Joey Tatter and all of his guys for coming out and entertaining us and being willing to share their talent with us. It was really great. I enjoyed it very much, the times that I was able to be there. The 15th Annual Food and Music Festival is this Saturday at the Town Square in the Women's Club lot, and that's always a fun time. I hope that everybody will attend that. And the Wendell Historical Society reverse raffle is coming up. Tickets might be sold out for that. I hope you got yours because it's going to be a fun event, and we appreciate them raising money for our museum for the town of Wendell. That being said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?